Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, BADBABY, accompanied by my co-host, Robert PEPINO. And tonight we have with us Samuel Hofman. And we are going to talk some more about the planets that are orbiting around us and all the Earth changes and you name it. You got any questions, call in. We'll try to answer your questions.
Well, we got a great show lined up tonight, everybody. Samuel Hofman is back with us, and we're going to be talking about Planet X, and it's actually just more than Planet X. It's a secondary solar system. And Samuel's been doing a lot of studies on this for quite a few years. But Samuel, before we get into that, let everybody know your background for those who weren't able to listen to you last time.
Well, I hear an echo off your voice there, Robert.
Yeah, so do I. I'm hearing
you might want to turn your background sound down.
Well, I have.
Yeah, I'm echoing. Oh boy. We're going to be echoing for a while. There you go.
Okay.
It's a little slower. It's a little farther away. Somebody's still loud. Hi, everybody. My name is Samuel Hofman. I'm a run-of-the-mill, average American home scientist like the rest of everybody who's hopefully listening tonight. I've been running a Facebook site called Montana Skywatchers 1 and 2 since early 2010 to 2011. Late 2010, early 2011, and before that, I was just a general viewer on my own Facebook site before I decided to actually talk. And also before that, I wrote a chemistry paper in high school that gained the attention of the U.S. government and some other people. That basically it ended up being crushed because I was forced into a 30-year non-disclosure agreement, and I wasn't able to speak about it to anyone until 2010 under an extreme set of threats and a bunch of other standard operational procedure of people who were trying to crush true information. And they basically said it was in the interest of national security, and they didn't want the Russians to know it, but it's a bigger story than that, because this whole scenario is funded by the G7, and hopefully everyone knows what that is. So I was basically invited, rather against my will, the second time, because I had to force this to sign the non-disclosure agreement before I understood the job they were offering me, and I was there for a brief period of time. And after a few months, I decided that what they were up to was not anything I wanted to have anything to do with. But during that period of time, I gained some insights from being there and the experience, et cetera, et cetera. And I was also, as Robert has spoke of, I was an alien abductee at first, and then it turned out to be more of a contactee, because after that I was contacted by other factions as well. For the fact that, it's like in the movie, say, for instance, the day that Earth stood still, when Klaatu got off, or I think his name was Klaatu, got off his ship, and he went and talked to a bunch of people, and the first person they went to was this professor who had solved equations, and he gave them the right answer, for those of you who know the movie. And for those of you who don't, it's a great movie, you should see it. But anyway, so because of my chemistry skills, to me, advanced chemistry was quite easy. I mean, I got straight A's through chemistry, and my teacher even admitted to me that I had surpassed her skills as well. But anyway, so I wrote this paper because I knew that our yellow dwarf star, and according to my understanding of subatomic chemistry and atomic weight value of the planets, and I did this approximation of the weight value of versus diameter and what we believed it was made up of, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was always wondering why the large gas giants, which are atomically heavy, weren't closer to the central star, which one would assume would be normal in normal subatomic chemistry structure. So I started pondering this, and over time, I had heard, I'd read the book of Immanuel Velikovsky, which is Worlds in Collision, which I do recommend, and he was a Jewish scientist, and he was scoffed and laughed at, and pretty much it was the end of his career after he introduced his materials. And of course, Sitchin and et cetera, et cetera. Over the years, it ate at me, and so I wrote this paper for a high school term paper, stating that I believed that we had to have a second star. And that's what a binary solar system is having a second star. Well, in this understanding of shell structure in chemistry, I try to place the atomic weight value accordingly, and with that series of equations, and I left it pretty general. It was pretty wide open, but I determined basically that we were something structured in the soft metals group, which of course we here on Earth we have, iron, and Earth is, supposedly got an iron core, so that makes sense. And anyway, long story short, I deemed that we had to have an additional solar system and an additional star in order for all this to function. And the reason I brought up Velikovsky was they were always talking about the planet X, and they were always talking about this aberration at Uranus and everything. There was some jog in orbit, and they couldn't understand why. And that led me to believe in the Planet X theory, which followed that, wait a minute, there's got to be a lot more. So in my thesis paper, or my term paper, I wrote down 3 examples of what I thought it to be. And of course, over a period of time, my professor turned it in to somebody. And 3 months later, had the government at my door asking me for information and then offering me a job, etc. That's the end of that speech. And since then, we went to, I've been at Facebook for the last 8 years trying to talk to people. I've been blocked off of it, my own personal YouTube. I've been cut off of Skype. I've been cut off of so many things now. The only thing that I'm still running off of is on Facebook, Montana Skywatchers 1 and 2. Now, Montana Skywatchers 1 is a closed site, members only, and I put some people who I know are good members and contributors who follow the rules, and I'll put them in one. And we originally started out with some scientists, but they, of course, have gotten quiet over the years because a lot of people don't necessarily believe this, even though the evidence has literally moved from theory, and a lot of people still to this day say to me, well, Sam, your theory. No, this is actually fact now. We've proven it for 8 straight years. My accuracy rate has been unbelievable. And I'm patting myself on the back here because I still don't know how I've done this well. And we started off with some original information, which was given to me by the Pleiadians on my contactee situation. And it cross-referenced with a film that I found online in 2008, 2009. Now, it was banned about 2010 in the United States, and a friend of mine in Germany, who was part of the German Polytechnic in Berlin, sent me a copy back, and we've kept it going ever since because we've kept the IP address, etc., and they haven't banned it there. Now, there's a lot of suppression of internet information in Canada, for instance, and in England and stuff. The Brits are cutting a whole bunch of information that I send over there, and usually that's a lot of the metaphysical stuff about, metaphysical stuff about chakras and this and that. They can't even watch that over there on their internet. But anyway, we've been doing this long enough that we now can identify the passing planets by their base clouds, because now these planets have atmospheres, and just like Earth has an atmosphere, and just like we have this massive, magnetosphere way outside of our ionosphere and everything else, and beyond our atmosphere itself is the magnetosphere. Those planets also have magnetospheres and atmospheres, and they're so huge. Saru and Nibiru and Uri's a gas giant, but Saru is this massive planet, like 5 times the size of Earth, and the Nibiru is supposedly, now I haven't, of course, gotten my measurement out there and flown into space with a tape measure, but Nibiru is supposedly 7 times the size of Earth. Now, so many people are running off of internet gossip. They believe that Nibiru was red, and it's the red-winged planet. Now, the winged planet is Saturn because it has a yellow moon that's in real close proximity to it, and that creates this ion bleed-off. Because it's in such close proximity, the ion bleed-off goes around the planet, which is why you have a tailed planet. And it is literally volcanic in nature, and I believe it to be, being that it's red, I think it's like made of iron, and it's got a core, and this close relation.
Probably a little bit like Io, I would say, Samuel.
Yeah, and it's got 2 other moons, which we have not gotten any real close-ups of the 2 other moons, but the yellow moon has been documented and filmed over a number of years on close passes. Now, people need to understand that Nibiru did not just get here. It's been here for, almost 7.5 years. And all these new folks that are on, they're just now discovering, Nibiru. And then they go, when will it get here? And I'm going, God, look up, and I had a lady the other day, can you give me the space coordinates for this? And I said, first of all, by the time I would write it down, it wouldn't be there anymore. And second of all, these things are so close. There's no reason for this. And then there's these people that are asking for money for telescopes and all of this so that they can catch the planets. Well, they've been so big and so huge, all you'd be doing is seeing land masses and little waving ETs, and, or clouds. And see, what people don't understand is these planets come so close and their atmospheres are right there. And I see it on TV every day. And I can tell you what year the commercial or the television show that's on was filmed literally by the location of what the shadow looks like. Because over the years, we have learned the base clouds of these planets. There are these, you see a big round in the sky and you see these tiny, tiny, tiny little clouds all over the place. And those aren't our clouds. Those are the atmosphere around the planet. And they get so damn close that they become sky fillers. We're not talking looking for a little thing out there, that little dot. And I still get that to this day. People send me a picture of a tiny star or Jupiter on the other side of the sun, or Mars or Mercury. I had that the other day. Somebody, what's this? And I said, it looks like Mercury. How can you be sure? I said, well, because it's on the map in the solar. And then I send them the link, and I do this all day long, and they're looking for the little stuff still. And I want to, reach out and wring their necks, because it's like, dude, go out your front door and look up, because that big dark shadow on such and such. Now, over the last month or so, we've had some phenomenal changes too. If you want me to just keep rattling, I will.
I'm just listening intently here.
Okay. Recently, in the last couple of days, we've had Nepenthe crossing over us, and that's why we have this intense rain weather, and and the shadowing and the gray clouding and everything has to do with Uri onset in the middle of the day. And these planets are so close to us that we're bumping into what they're bumping into, which is their ionosphere is bumping into our ionosphere, and we're grinding off these drag-off clouds. Go ahead.
Sammy, when you mean close, in astronomical units, what are you talking about?
We're talking LUs, not AUs.
Lunar distances.
Yeah, we're
okay.
There's sightings, numerous phenomenal sightings at night behind the moon, and it's the same size during the day. Now they come in this almost in an arc, but we've got to take into account also our out view. When we look out of our atmosphere, there's this 37% graduating cone that we view from. We only see at this weird angle, like the shape of a telescope, where we see outward at this, and that's it. And the rest is our atmosphere, because our atmosphere is not just oxygen; it's nitrogen and hydrogen and sulfites and phosphorus and all of this. I mean, what we breathe in is what we use out of what we take in for every breath is only 25% oxygen, and the rest is other gases. People don't even know that. And it's a basic. Unfortunately, science wasn't very well taught to a lot of folks, and I've spent a lifetime of studying beyond. Because I'm addicted to studying. I can't help it.
There's nothing wrong with that, Samuel. It's viewing from our Earth, because it's it's a ball. I guess we would be seeing these objects through a convex lens, so to speak. And when you look through a convex
the shape
lens,
of an eye view when it goes out of our eyes, which we're viewing from anyway.
Right. So
smaller percentage at the bottom, wider arc as we see outward. And now people also got to take into account, if you want to see the difference in what's going on with our atmosphere, a lot of people have commented how the cumulonimbus clouds are flat at the top, and they go, why is that? I've never seen that. It's because their atmosphere is actually suppressing ours, and it's shoving the tall clouds way down, because we're in compressed orbit. All these planets are jammed together, so the properties are changing. This is why scientists a few years back all of a sudden said, wait a minute, radioactive decay is no longer constant. What's wrong? So, and this is, of course, the effect what people's moods are being really bad right now, because Attu's moon is crossing so close to our planet, and it's so massive. I'm literally tempted to call it Attu's smaller white sister planet, but I have no name for it. And I'm not saying I'm 100% accurate on the names, but 95% accurate, because everything matches over the last 8 years period. We didn't even call it that until after 2 years of observation to make sure that we knew what we were talking about. And anyway, they come in so close. Now, we've also got to take into account electrical thread attachment. These planets do not collide into each other.
Right.
When they get too massively close, like they're going to bump, there's a purple lightning storm from hell. And this is where these strong winds and all these storms and hail and snow, and I mean, everything goes crazy and kooky. And this is, you can tell the trees that they're lying on the Fujita scale when they report these tornadoes and stuff. When they're calling a missing stump, or the trees are being ripped out of the stump, and they're calling that an F3. I'm sorry, that's an F5 that goes down to the ground. Otherwise, it's broken off. An F3 is broken off at the top of the tree. 10, 12 feet high, and you go to an F4, and it's taking the tree out in the middle. If it's being ripped out of the ground, where you're looking at some really high, strange winds. And of course, they've dropped the. I've been watching the earthquake monitors all week, and they're way turned down. Oh my God! I mean, they have gone down. They've literally.
And that's been going on for a long time.
No, but I'm saying they did it again. Yeah. They knocked another.
So they turned it down.
Even more.
Down it. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
We're talking. There's just these tiny little chicken scratchings on the EQ now.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Yellowstone. 90. What was it? Just within the last 24 hours, 98 small quakes and counting.
Right. So, well, this is also when Attu's moon. Now, currently, what I'm looking at on the map is we probably have asteroids. Now, I got a name drop here just for a friend. I was talking to a friend of mine in California the other day, and he was on a live feed, and he was, of course, staring at his own face, and I'm looking above him, and I'm watching these asteroids go over the top of his head, and they're not small. These things are massive. We're not talking, little dots. We're talking bubbling, boiling things that you can see a trail behind, and numerous hundreds of them. And it was so big, I was just sitting there going, "Oh my God!" And if you're looking, I'm looking at the weather on the SEC geostationary satellite imagery right now, and it's literally like we've got a close orbiting asteroid that is coming right over the top of the U.S. for the last week, day after day after day, and causing these freak eddies in our Arctic. And I'm also looking at the fact that the Earth is tipped, and that's why our Arctic drop-down zone all over the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere are way down from normal, because our axis is tipped, and therefore our refractive light from the sun as to normal summer is different than it normally would. There's less of it hitting us than it would normally be, and therefore the pole values are much colder. I'm looking at this really huge tipped rotating storm at Antarctica as we speak, and it's got an axis to it. I mean, it's tipped over, and I get reports of 11 degrees off north from the East Coast, and 8 on another place, and 9 on another place. And of course you might have variations due to the iron ore in the ground around you. But anyway, so we're seeing that, and we're also seeing that Nepenthe is tipped as well. And remember, when the Nibiru system first got here, all the planets tipped.
Yeah, no, I absolutely remember that.
And that has to do with gravitational electrical thread attachments, where they're grabbing each other.
Yeah, explain the electrical thread attachment for me.
Well, you know how a magnet, you've got a magnet A that has a north pole and a south pole, and you've got magnet B and it has a north pole and a south pole. You put them together, what happens? Boom, north is going to grab south.
Right.
Okay, now were you to separate those, even if they're a distance away from each other, there is still a field of dead center straight line that reaches to that other object, and that is a thread attachment.
I got you. Okay. Because I didn't know that.
Grabbed it. It's got that first initial where they'll jump to each other. That's that distance to where all of a sudden that magnet will jump. Those Scotty dogs where they flip, that kind of thing. And everybody talks about that in pole shift and stuff like this. This is thread attachment. Each time these planets pass us, and the bigger ones with the larger magnetospheres must have these intense fields. And if we buffer into them, I'm sure we're literally, being tipped over And then that's part of what the Earth wobble has been going on like crazy for the last 5 years.
Yeah, big time.
And then we're watching the spiraling change in the actual magnetic north, and we're watching spiraling real oddities going on in the magnetosphere graphs all over the planet. And everybody wonders, well, why is it crossing? That our magnetosphere is fluxing and then failing on itself and going into the black, way, way off in our distant trailings of the cosmic debris. And it's in this black zone all of a sudden, like, and then it clears up and it goes back to normal, wave of magnetic field effects, etc. And excuse me.
I was just going to say, and look at the electromagnetic effect it's having on all the animals. I mean, and I know this has been going on a long time, but you got birds. I mean, all kinds of birds.
We had some sort of a finch in our yard today with blue wings we've never ever seen in our life.
Yeah, exactly.
And my daughters.
And another curious thing as well is there's a lot of, and I don't know how to explain it, but there's a lot of animals, and we're talking
today we're just discussing how the turtles are having trouble finding home.
Right, but even more so, you've got like birds and squirrels and raccoons. They're like coming up to people, not being vicious or anything, but just like totally ignoring them. Like, I'm more interested in something else, and they're all looking like up at the sky, and they're just sitting there motionless, looking up at the sky. What the hell are they looking at?
A different spectrum than we. When was the last time you walked down the street, city street, and seen anybody look up?
Oh, like never.
I look up when people come up to me and ask me what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm looking at that planet right there. And this is where I have to throw out my ace in the hole card. I cannot believe that you people are not seeing these planets. It's like, oh my God, how can you miss that? And they go, what? And I go, and then I have to hand them my gray-black sunglasses, and I see, you see that huge dark shadow? And they go, yeah, what is that? Because they can't fathom that a planet would be that close to us.
Right.
It's still, some of these planets on their close passes fill half the sky, and you wonder why it looks like it's sunset at 3:00 in the afternoon, and then
casting massive shadows.
And then 2 hours later, it sort of comes back. And I've got people talking about the sun simulator, because some Yahoo that I'm not even going to give credit to because he's such a jerk, invented one afternoon on his show, and you'd be amazed at how disimpolo it flies, and it has wings beyond your wildest dreams, and yet the truth is still parked in the garage.
Right.
And I've been screaming this for 8 years, because we've been actually sighting these planets for 8 years, and we're not guessing. We've been watching these. We've understood even what they look like. We've gotten to the point where we can tell you their color. We've got shadowing pictures. We've got base clouds. We've got what they look like at night. Recently, Nepesity in her close past, which is what she's doing now, and she's the rain bomb, where just a year's worth of rain will fall in 2 hours, and she'll come in close past and drag up our atmosphere and moisture, and she produces it somewhere. Now, people take into account space water also. And also, people have to take into account space clouds, because when you have electricity, the transference of the energy in the atmosphere of that planet, and the electrical, this is creating all this space water. And Suspicious Observer even talks about space water. And this is where, of course, our planetary water comes from. It didn't just miraculously appear out of nowhere. We actually get water from space. But anyway, because everybody studies these rules that were laid down by Einstein, and you hear his praises and you see the commercials about him, and he's even in Geico commercials and everything else. And Albert said this, and he's totally but wrong. There was a lot of good. He did a lot of good work, but a lot of that was stolen from the patent office, but we won't go into that. But he couldn't get past his own E equals MC squared, and he tried to figure out the theory, because gravity is not the force. It's existent, but gravity is actually two things. It is electrical thread attachment, and it is centrifugal force. And I imagine there's some amount of magnetism that's involved in the planet's core versus our internal iron in our blood, et cetera, et cetera. So there's 2 or 3 properties that we can attribute to gravity, including the fact that things fall to the ground because they're falling to a spinning sphere. and it's so minute that we can't judge the difference. But anyway, I digress. The electrical effects of these planets are real, and people are talking about that it's coming from another dimension. And no, this is in our dimension. It's part of our solar system, except we separate because of this charge that builds up between the two stars and all of that, and then we separate. And you and I talked about that last week, or 2 weeks ago when we did the last show, where we load up and then we discharge and then load up.
I remember.
And everything is connected all the way across time and space. Every rock is connected to every rock. Even if it's a million miles away, there's an electrical field around everything, and everything is made up of this. You could literally say, like, we're a subatomic group inside the sleeve of a giant, and that's called the giant, the giant sleeve syndrome. Yeah, I think that's what they call it. It's been so long since I studied all of that's like college years ago, which was a long time ago. But anyway,
right.
The planets, when they get close, they change. Like Nepenthe, for instance, when she starts to get really close, she'll drop this coarse snorkel. And then at the back eddy of her, she starts all these tornadoes behind her as she passes. And the lead object of the object cluster group has broken away from the other mains of the object cluster, because there's several cluster groups under Uri. And when Uri close passes and Nepenthe and Attu close pass over the top of us, which is where they are, and they do this daily, real, interesting orbiting jog over the top of us. And what's under all of those is all these asteroids. And like, I go back to my friend Bobby Allen, and there I mentioned his name, and we were seeing the asteroids fly over the top of his head. Now, when those planets come in, the stuff that's underneath them gets close to us as well. Now, 2 or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, we had a really close through-Earth atmosphere, literally, maybe 30, 40 miles off the deck. I'm not sure. But we had a lead object that left a trail all the way straight through the sky. Do you remember that, Mary?
Yeah.
That trail through the sky, that was the lead object of the OCG, Object Cluster Group. Now, NASA calls that the asteroid pack, but they told us that it was like many light years away. And see, they give half-truths. They'll tell you something, 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 so they get the credit for the discovery, but then they'll tell you it's a million miles away.
Yeah, anyway. That's typical of them anyway, because on a daily basis, there's asteroids. I mean, you literally just go on YouTube, type asteroids in, and everybody's recording them. They're being picked up on, surveillance cameras and
searches every day, and I check the meteor reports. Now, Oklahoma, for instance, is having wildfires. Well, we at the same time, just the other day, I saw over the top of Bobby Allen's head, or I mentioned him again. Well, he'll be happy now. But anyway, over the top of Bobby's head. And the next day, there's wildfires 2 states away. So, I'm sure there's drop-off, and now they're talking about the Leonids coming in and all of this. And if anybody looked at the stars recently, they're not where they're supposed to be this time of year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But again, the wobble has accentuated quite dramatically. And I just want to throw this in. Since that wobble accentuated, that's also thrown the jet stream way out of whack. So hence we're getting tornadoes and hurricanes and torrential.
I got a really cool site that I could turn you on to, and I'd have to look it up to give you the name, but we can also discuss that at another time. On the poles have started with these low pressure eddies, and there used to be 2 or 3. Now, in the last 2 weeks, we've got 11, 12, and 15 different rotational lows on each of the poles. I should switch to that site because I can grab it easy as a heartbeat. But whoops! Of course, I clicked the wrong button and turned the whole internet off.
That's okay. We've all done it.
It's of course famous last words, and that's when you trip.
Right.
And that's the way it works. Oh, I can get that in a heartbeat. Yeah, shut myself down, blow a few house fuses. I don't have that bad
Sammy,
wiring.
I want to ask you about all the cracks that are opening up because I've been posting a lot of that on Facebook.
Okay. Well, we briefly crossed. Attu's moon is okay. We know that our moon affects our tides, right? Standard, right? Everybody knows.
Right.
Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 8. There's 18 low pressure systems on the North Pole right now. Anyway, when Attu's moon comes in close pass, and that's due over the top of our heads again. Now, it was there last year as well. This is literally cyclic. It's been doing the same thing, but it's getting closer and closer and closer each year. Now, Attu's moon, ever since it got here in ever since it was visually accountable in the standard south-facing, if you were to take a camera facing south and noticing that our sun is way too far south, and take a picture, you would have seen on the right-hand side next to the sun this moon. And it was sighted. I don't know why half the people missed it, except for the chemtrails that would make it much harder to see at lower levels for those people who have never heard me talk before. But anyway, higher up here, we see everything a lot easier. I'm up at 4,500 feet. Now, when Attu's moon started crossing from the right-hand side, where it's now on the left-hand side and above us, left-hand side of the sun and above us during the day, and it rotates as we rotate. It moves, but actually it's us rotating, and it's slightly drifting slowly on its path. But since the arrival in close proximity of Attu's moon, which is what I should have said 2 minutes ago, we've seen the Mississippi River all of a sudden went dry and empty. We see long, drawn-out tidal flow where villages that normally put their boats, over here for the tide flow, all of a sudden they're looking out in a mile and they don't even see the ocean. That is the direct lunar effect of Attu's moon. And we've had I've got thousands of sightings of Attu's moon from Hong Kong, Malaysia, Indonesia, New York, Holland, Germany, France, Canada, Sweden. We've got members all over the world, and their sightings come in every day, and everybody contacts me, and then we compare them to know that this is not just a cloud here. When the cloud base looks exactly the same here in Sweden as it does in New York, that's not a cloud. And this is how we started doing it, 8 years ago, was by comparative science. And these other guys, they're just one guy sitting in a room looking at one picture, where I get hundreds of pictures per day sent to me. And then I save the keepers. And I've been doing this so long that I can look automatically. And of course, these colors, the planets have colors. Nebesity is green, 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 green. And when you're seeing a green sky, you've got a planet over you. When you're seeing a red sky, which everybody's seeing, because the Saturn is headed toward us, and she's red, and she is on the right-hand side of the sun currently most of the time, and awful close to the sun. I could say she's in the Mercury region of the rings, the direct coloring of deep blue Nibiru on the right-hand side, and the gray cloudy of Uri when Uri comes onset and rises over the top of us, and all of a sudden the whole planet gets engulfed in clouds. Uri's got a huge bubbly base cloud that is visual, and we got pictures of it years ago, and so over time it's gotten closer and closer and closer and closer, and then over the top of our heads and then away. And these planets, now I've got a couple of crop circle pictures where they showed it was these microspirals. We talked about this last time. It showed these microspirals where we came closer to it. And actually, people talk about Nibiru coming to us, or the Planet X coming to us. We're the smaller planetary group. We're the smaller sun. We have the two suns. They're orbiting each other from what I understand. Hercubus is behind them. And on, the farther side of the suns. And we came to them because they're the larger system. We are passing through the Nibiru system, not it passing through us, because we're smaller.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way. I never even really considered thinking about it. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, they came from underneath, and the first sighting, we spent 2 or 3 years looking at Neumayer Station and all her brothers and sisters down there in Antarctica.
Right.
And, we chuckled for the longest period of time, and I was telling people that, everybody wants me to prove it to them. And I'm going, well, would you explain to me then why we're on Antarctica, we're at Neumayer Station, here's the live camp. Would you explain to me why in the middle of winter it's daylight?
Very good point.
And they're silent. And they go, why? And I said, because it's pitch black in the Antarctic in winter.
Yeah, I think it only gets maybe a half hour of sunrise,
right.
and then it goes
but
back
there
down.
was daylight for years.
Yeah.
And everybody was talking about where's this extra illumination coming from. And if you look at the stars, you go out and just look at the stars tonight, they'll be brighter than you've ever seen them.
That I can't disagree with you. And again, what you said about them not being in their proper position is absolutely correct. And
well,
all
then
you
you've
have
also
to do
got
is
to
point
take
people
into
to the Inuit Indians. All you got to do is point to the Inuit Indians. They'll all tell you the same thing.
Well, have you noticed the transition of the Milky Way?
Well, I can't say I have because where I'm at, I can't get a clear.
Okay, I'm in Montana.
I'm in Phoenix, so I'm not going to see that unless I'm way outside the city.
Now, what has happened now? Do you remember the Mayan calendar and the 13th Baktum?
Sure, of course.
Okay, we just went through that, and that was what the 2012 was all about.
Right.
Well, our solar system goes through the ecliptic plane of our universe on the 13th Baktum. We have moved from the southern below standard existence that we've all known all of our lifetimes of being on the lower half of the ecliptic plane of our universe. And our planet and our star and everything have been traveling, you could say, 20-degree angle, 15-degree angle, whatever. And now we are headed through the galactic plane, which has also affected our radioactive decay ratio because we're going into the strong wave properties of the magnetosphere of the universe. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I kind of.
Okay.
I kind of understand what you're saying. Yeah.
We over time, every 300,000 years or so, we move like a radio wave from top to bottom, top to bottom through the ecliptic plane of our universe. And yet we're continuing to spiral at the same time, closer and closer over the millennium towards the central black hole, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the rotation and all of that. But we need a couple of trillion years before this universe is going to.
Anyway. You're talking about the center of our galaxy, not the universe, right?
So that's also going on. So that's also affecting our electrical Schumann resonance and our atomic decay ratio, because the properties and rules have changed because we are in a higher magnetic property exterior surroundings than normal. And we talked about the moon, and you asked about why the water's changing. When was the last time you boiled a pan of water?
Just today.
Did you notice it boiled really fast?
Yeah, it's kind of. Well, I mean, I got to be honest. I put hot water in the pan from the sink, so I get it to boil a little faster. But yeah, when I put cold water in my pots, I kind of have a tendency to believe, it's boiling a little bit faster.
It's a little faster than it used to.
Just a little bit.
There are some property changes that are going on, and the birds know this, and the deer know it, and we know it too. I mean, look how many people are going crazy and being argumentative and very selfish and self-centered. I mean, we know who, but anyway, I won't go get political. But I mean, the whole world's we're all on edge. We're all a scared cat hiding in the corner right now because these same electrical properties are also affecting the fluids and the water ratio inside of our brains.
I agree with that. I'll agree with that statement. It's also the electromagnetic interference that's screwing with our brains as well.
Right. And then you add all of the Wi-Fi and all this other stuff.
Oh,
and we could
get ready for 5G. By the way, get ready for 5G. Let's see how much more they can screw with us.
Oh yeah, I've never been a believer. If you listen to Tesla, and when he was dealing with Edison and the difference between AC and DC power and direct power, and Tesla warned Edison that putting up his power stations like we're running it today, was toxic. It is what creates these electrical fields, and we're living in literally cancer-causing boxes.
Yep.
And these electrical wires in this electrical field.
Years ago, they forced a smart meter on me.
Right.
And now they're trying to put a new, improved smart meter on my house.
I got three on my house and one sitting.
About it.
I got three on my house now because they went my electric meter, smart meter the other day, and then they did my gas thing 6 months ago, and now I got this Wi-Fi sitting in front of me here, And if you run that stuff too much, your head ends up hurting so bad you don't know why. And there's nothing that can cure it but an entire turning everything off and walking away from it. We're getting electric headaches now. And because all the properties, it's affecting everything, and we know that the water boils faster, so what's the water doing inside our heads?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your body, your body is complete more water than your body. So I agree.
And I hear you.
The thing is that I have a locked gate on my property, and I've had this guy come to my gate a couple times. I had 2 Dobermans running the yard, and he said, I didn't think I should come in there. And I said, I don't think you should either.
Well,
and he said, well, I'm trying to give you a smart meter. And I said, I already got one. I don't need 2.
If you're really worried about it, I put like a steel plate a couple of feet away from it. Go buy yourself a 3 foot by 4 foot tall steel plate and just bury it in the ground, but foot deep, and let that thing bounce everything off. Closest to your house, just in your direction, so that there's at least a break pattern in the magnetic field. I don't know exactly how that would work. So
on the side of my house, I don't know how I'm going to get a plate behind it.
Ooh, bummer. Excuse me, dry throat.
What makes me
put it on the wall on the inside of the house.
Yeah. Well, what makes me curious about this whole thing is they keep sending me letters, urgent. Yeah. So I called them and told them, explained to them, I got one. I don't want another one. Well, this is a better one. It's new and improved. And I said, oh yeah, why? Does it send out more radiation than this one?
Yeah, well, it's a tough call. I mean, where do you draw the line on this in a public scenario? I mean, frankly, I have troubles going into town anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around the people. I don't want to be around the smell and the noise, and we're being bombarded by so many things, and you look at these people, and I hate to say it, but I want to talk to people about the planets, but most of them wouldn't understand. And
it's a zombified nation. And you're dealing with 10-20% of the people worldwide. That's it, max.
When you shake the foundations of some people, they get excruciatingly angry with you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when I was invited to the other half of the country, against my better judgment, shall we say, they got excruciatingly mad at me for telling them my opinion. And they said to me, how dare you, you arrogant little bastard.
Yeah.
And this guy was screaming at me at the top of his lungs. I can still remember watching the dandruff drop off his head.
Wow.
I mean, this guy was red-faced screaming at me. And today, currently, he's one of the top dog scientists in Washington.
Yeah, well, when you shatter somebody's paradigm, they don't really want to hear that, do they?
Yeah, well, they were saying how, because I threw out gravity in my equation, and they screamed at me, how dare you think you're smarter than Einstein and Newton, which I actually have been government rated as being smarter than both of them.
That's a good thing that we have you on our side.
I'm quite a few points higher than Einstein, and they told me that direct. I mean, I said, "You mean I'm smarter than Einstein?" And they went, "Oh yeah, you are." And I just went, wow, and then I threw it, in the drawer and forgot about it, because I thought everybody knew this stuff that I know, and all it's been is me studying all my life, because I have this overwhelming urge to find things out. I'm very type A, and, you could say hyper, you can probably hear that in how I talk, but, I have to know. It's like turning the movie off in the middle. I can't do that. I got to watch it till the end. I can't. And I follow serendipity, and for those that know me know that I have indigo gifts, because I see things and know things that other people don't. And I just follow it, because it's like this driving force. I have no choice. I have to know.
Well, I mean, I commend you for that. And, that's the problem, though. Egos on this planet always seem to take first chair to the brain, the thinking brain, which is what we should be using, and not ego.
I hear that a lot. And then people say to me, the other side of the flip coin is they go, well, that's beyond my education, and it's not. What you need to do is go get a basic understanding of the information and try to understand a couple of times, and before you know it, you're rolling downhill.
Mm. You know what really makes me mad is when someone asks you to tell them, and then when you tell them, they get angry. Why did you ask me?
Right. Well, or they think you're a loony, one or the other.
And then I get a lot of people that say that I'm arrogant, and then a lot of people get mad at me because I've lost them 5 minutes ago, and they don't want to tell me that. And
isn't it funny when they get that blank stare on their face?
Oh yeah, where they start looking around. That's about 2 minutes in. You start talking about what coronal mass ejections are, and they look at you and go, "What?"
Well, you know what's good is when they say, "Well, what can we do about it?" and you tell them, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it." Well, why are you even talking about it then?
I get a lot of people that say, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it, so therefore I'm going to go back to my newspaper." And and I had a real good friend of mine. I went and told him about this, and he says, "There's nothing I can do about it." And he says, "Oh, okay." And then he was just completely uninterested beyond that.
Yeah,
I guess a lot of people don't realize.
You want to stay in a box. Stay in a box.
Well, I really need to point out that this object cluster group, or multiple groups of asteroids that are underneath Uri and orbiting the side of Attu and underneath Nepesity now, and have been sighted going across the face of the sun, and everybody thinks, "Oh, Nibiru's here," or "Oh, it's a second sun." No, the asteroids are coming by, and there's a yellow one and a green one and a red one and a blue, and they're really cool. And of course, then there's the skull, and we don't talk about that often, but the skull has been sighted for 3 or 4 years, and it's just. I saw it, about a year ago when Attu, literally about this time of year, was over the top of us, and Attu's moon was directly below, because it changes with thread link and location, and it's odd how the axes of the planets tip when they go from one side of the sun to the other. And I think that has a lot to do with our perceptive 37-degree out view. I'm not sure yet, but I mean, we've seen the axes tip, and we know what's what when. And we all, my job is really easy because all I have to do is say, well, what side of the sun is it on? Because they send in pictures of the sun and then the right and then the sun and then the left, and that's how I ask them in format. And the reporters have been phenomenal. There's some great, Matthew Wee in Malaysia, and Ron Newman I've been talking to for years in Indonesia, and Richard, and I mean, there's so many people, and Andy and Sharon. I mean, there's just so many people that send me pictures daily from around the world, and they've all learned what to do and how to do it, and they're getting phenomenal captures this week. I mean, they're so cool, and yet, they're not definitive that I can hand to everybody and say, well, see, there's this big circular green planet. But no, it's a wave of base clouds followed by the color, and then you can see a cut edge of a big round planet and clouds and slightly enveloping it, and you go, oh my God, that's a planet. And there's thousands of people who I have taught over the last 8 years, I mean thousands, how to see these planets, and they see them every day. And the rest of the culture and media out there in internet land and Facebook land and Twitter and tweet don't even have a clue. And they say, well, your theory. No, this is not a theory. This is 8 years worth of comparative science that's panned out. I mean, we're beyond summation here. This is real.
Yeah, I mean, Samuel, I've seen the photographs coming in and videos coming in from all over the world, and it's mostly the ones that I've seen there at night under cloud cover, where all of a sudden the sky will turn like a reddish purple for no reason in just one area, or greenish.
Right, purple.
Pushing that color down onto the clouds.
Attu is a smaller gas giant, and it's purple, and it's got that white moon, and we've been looking at it for literally since January, and it crossed our faces, and now it's directly over the top, and now it's Nepesity's dance right over in our faces, and the sky's turning green, and then Saturn is directly behind her at sunrise on the right-hand side, and people are seeing these immense red skies, and they're just phenomenally beautiful. And then there's an intense yellow sky as well, and that is when the yellow moon goes in front of our suns, and it just turns everything bright yellow. And
wow.
When you put all of these pieces together over time, before you know it, you see them, and that's why I said I've taught thousands of people, and now they say they can't unsee them. It's just like I see them so easy. And that's where I've become after. I've done this every day for anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Some days I put in 10. It just depends on the sightings that are coming in. I try to answer as many people. But if you want a real good reference for you, Robert, if you want to go type or write this down. Understanding the Skies, Edition 1, Samuel Hofman, Hofman, and that's on YouTube. A lot of my videos have been sent around the world. They've been translated in, I think, about 5 or 6 different languages now: Spanish, French. I got somebody turned it into Swedish, I think, recently, and I have a pretty good following in Hong Kong and Indonesia and Malaysia, and I got a few Russian friends, but they're not. So they're not very active, and RT's been blocked. So who knows? Maybe they're blocked from us. And then I have a lot of friends in England and Scotland, and I'll say hi to Mark C. in Ireland. And I didn't say his entire name because I don't want him to get in any trouble over there from his government. I don't know what their rules are, but I talk to somebody in another country at least 5, 6, 8 countries a day, every day. And I've been having troubles with my PM, and Facebook is changing the rules, and Newsfeed has changed, and like we were talking with BADBABY earlier, that she's not even being promoted anymore on their sites. So I got to say that
I can't even tweet.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I got kicked off Tweet 3 years ago. YouTube canceled me 4 years ago. I haven't opened an email in 5 years. It just spins and cycles and cycles and cycles and cycles.
Yeah, I've got your YouTube video up right now, Samuel. I'm looking at it.
Understanding the Skies Edition 1, and there's like 20 editions, but a lot of them have been lost. There's some good copies. There's bad copies. Now, I had a co-admin that dumped 2.5 years of work down the toilet because he got jealous or he got petty and greedy, and I hope he hears that and he knows who he is. But dumped 2.5 years work over one picture because he couldn't support me because he thought it was a Photoshop, and it was a picture that I'd collected years before he was ever even on the scene.
All right. Well, I can tell you this, Samuel.
Okay.
I can tell you this from my own 2 eyes and my mouth to your ears. Going back 3 months ago, we had a major storm here in Phoenix, and it was really heavily cloud covered with those dark black kind of clouds.
Right. The bubbly bottom.
Not so much bubbly bottoms, but just pretty much dark clouds with breaks in those clouds.
We had a lot of close passes and a lot of earth shadowing back then.
Yeah, with how clouds, when it's you're having those heavy storms, they break a little, but they become translucent, but are still dark.
Mm-hmm.
But when they become translucent, you can see things through them. And I knew the sun was to the left, I knew to my right, and then I saw this object, probably let's say 4 solar distances away from the sun. And it appeared to be, from what I gathered, maybe the size of our moon, a little bigger, a little
that was
smaller.
probably Ashton's moon when it was crossing.
I saw it as clear as day.
Yep, that was. And did it have notable craters?
I couldn't tell. It was just around.
Okay, well, Ashton's moon currently is being sighted in the Far East. I was looking at and there's times that they're so close you can almost see them on radar because you can see the wake eddies affecting.
Right.
And this is why I was watching the satellite with Bobby's feed, and then I went and I ran in here and I turned on my Earth program. It's called Earth: A Global Map, Wind Direction, and earthnullschool.net. And I watch the Earth patterns on that pretty regularly. I'm a pattern watcher, and I've always been able to discern things that other people don't notice. I have an eye for detail, etc. I rated really high on a lot of those tests. But anyway, I over time I sit and stare at it, and before you know it, I know it. And I've been doing this for so long that we're not guessing anymore because this has become fact, and there's thousands and thousands of people out there seeing these planets, but they don't really know what's going on, so that it's really hard for them to formulate a series of opinions. Although I have to kind of, pat myself on the back. A lot of people are finally saying Immaru and Attu and Nepesity instead of Harrington and all this other maps that are going around the internet that have only got so many bodies and it's completely inaccurate. Not only that, they're showing it on the dinner plate rotation, and it's like that's so 2D. I don't even know how you can even, because the planets hold different positions up and down too. We're talking 3-dimensional, not 2-dimensional.
Yeah,
And
no question about that. Yeah, I mean, it is on a disc, but people don't understand that disc is thick.
and then you got this whole movement of flat earthers. Oh my God, I want to
please don't take me down that road.
It's like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me.
Those people are really nuts. I'm sorry, but they're
I'm sorry
down.
too, and you should see. I'm not gonna throw the dice on the table, but you should see. I've even noticed whom generally they are because I pattern watch, and I
think flat earthers are government paid trolls, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, I have to say, there's an awful lot of those guys popping out of the woodwork lately, and they walk in and they cause dissension. And the best thing I can say is, don't fall into the negative. Don't feed trolls. Don't feed them, otherwise they're going to stick around. And I bet you they get 50 cents for every line they get to repeat themselves. Who knows?
Probably. Who knows?
Sam, give us your idea of what we have in store for us in the next few months. Give us your idea.
We're looking at the weather forecast. In 1850 there was no summer.
Yeah.
1848, 1849, 1850, something like that. It's been a while since I looked that up. But we are so far, we're having this drop down polar region, and that could have to do with Earth tip and planet shadowing and everything. And like I said a few minutes ago, there are 18, 19, 20 low pressure systems from literally Mexico to all the way on the other side of the planet to, let me spin this around, literally from Mexico to the middle of China and northern India, and the jet stream is going backwards across the African coast. The normal flow is supposed to be completely the other direction of the jet stream, and it's breaking into tails. And for a period of a couple months ago, we had complete dual rotation. The North Pole was spinning one direction, and the South Pole was spinning the same direction, which it never does.
Not supposed to do that, ever.
And let's look what it's doing right now. Let's have a look. Are they both going the same direction? Yes, they're still both going the same direction in a clockwise rotation, North Pole and South Pole as we speak. And the polar region is reaching, from the South Pole, is reaching all the way up to middle of Australia, middle of South Africa, middle of South America, and there's these really unusual middle latitude eddies that we've been observing, that where the flow of air was outward and up, but nowhere else, where you didn't know where it went. There was no trail, and there was these like ventings.
But that would probably most likely caused by our electromagnetic field now being, affected by the planets, which now could cause multipoles, which kind of sounds like what you're saying.
Thread attachment and ion bleed off. You know how 4-foot office tube lighting works? There's a gas inside the canister, and then they put electricity at one end, and they put electricity at the other end, and the gas in the middle glows.
Right.
It's ionization of the particles, and then it puts off the light. Okay, the planets have been doing that too. Recently, we got a whole bunch of nighttime footage pictures of the base cloud of Nepenthe and its trailing ion cloud below it, and then we also got pictures of it reaching all the way to way distant Saru, which is way behind Uri currently, and on the left-hand side of the sun, but still off distant. And she's coming in behind the group as we're heading towards Nibiru and under Uri and under Atu and under Nepenthe in this rotational hook in a clockwise motion underneath them currently, and they're slowly getting farther and farther away, and then Hercubus and then the Standard Red will also go upward and to the right of us and the sun as we head on our way down to the lower left, if you can grasp what I just described.
Yeah.
The ion bleed-offs between the poles, all the planetary poles started glowing after the tipped axes occurred about 2013-ish, where they started getting pictures of Jupiter and Mars. They all of a sudden had this pole illumination on the bottom. It was this perfect circle, and it was down below on its magnetosphere. And then there's this sort of a star pattern at the north pole of some of these planets. a hexagonal glowing. And now Earth is doing that. Now we've got numerous, I'd say, 150 captures over the last 2 years where there's these beams of light. They're going, the city street lights are going way up into the sky. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I've seen
and
them.
they're multi-rainbow.
For the last couple, 3-4 years, yeah.
Okay, and that's ion bleed off because the light photons coming out of our street lights are following a highly accelerated pathway straight up that attachment bleed off between planets along that magnetic polar value speedway, shall we say. It's a highway. Do you understand what those things are now? It's an ion bleed off between planets. We've been watching that literally since 2010 when the planets first passed by. We saw the smaller planets, Saturn and Nepesi, bleeding off onto the bottom of Uri, and everybody was calling that a rocket launch, and they were calling it this, and NASA said it's space gases. And then they came up with all these different cloud names, like shelf clouds and all
right.
Those is new category of cloud, which never existed until after the planets got here, because they're giving people a plausible something to tell them not to look anywhere past the chemies, which we don't want to even get into, because that's going to get us all in trouble. But and those dim the view as well, and because all the particulate in the air, therefore it's like looking through a dirty glass. You can't see out as well as you could. But anyway, I was saying that the sightings, nighttime sightings of the ionization of Nepesi have just been phenomenal. And now we've seen it in the past. About 3 years ago, when Nepesi originally left from its original onset close pass, because it was so small for so long, underneath Uri, we just sort of thought it was like a lens flare for the longest time. And then that pattern stayed the same, and it stayed the same, and then they got bigger, and then they got bigger, and wow, there's a red one there, wow, there's a green one there, and they're right the same place. Oh, they're dancing between each other, okay, but they're generally still there. So we've proven this as they got closer and closer and closer, and then we didn't even know Attu had a moon until literally about 1.5 years ago, when Attu finally got so close that we started looking at this cloud pattern that was right there in the same spot over and over and over again, and it's angled and has stripes. And now the close pass of Attu's moon now has shown numerous pictures of all these major intense crater, which is moon cratering, which is why we call it the Attu's moon instead of another planet that we don't know, the unnamed planet, etc. But we know it's Attu's moon because it has repetitive, same facial shadowing time after time. Nepesi has all of these green lit volcanic areas. They must be massive. Of course, now Nepesi is a smaller planet. It may be even smaller than Earth. I don't know. It could be bigger, but it's way smaller than Saturn. Saturn is actually bigger than Attu, but she's so far away out of the dance that I think she dances literally on an almost different suborbit trajectory between Uri and Saru, because everything pretty much follows behind Saru, and Nibiru is the leader. And in some of my videos on my YouTube, it shows a planet count, but it's inaccurate. That's that film that we brought over from Germany again. The planet count's inaccurate. In most information, there's some certain amount of inaccuracies, and people stop looking up the hype and oh my God, there's so much disinformation. And I wonder if they're producing these films to keep people confused.
Or keep them scared, or both, But,
people have a right to be scared right now. Frankly, they should be making some plans now. They need to have something and not need it instead of need something and not have it.
I agree with you, but again,
and I'm not talking violence or anything like that, but learn about, non-perishable dry goods that you can make something out, and don't buy stuff that you'll never eat, and watch your cans and mark your dates and rotate your stock and all of that. But extra water, like we talked about last time on last show, it takes 2 gallons of water to flush your toilet.
Right.
If you've got no power, you're going to have to walk to the nearest river to flush your toilet 4 or 5 times a day. And what are we going to do? People need to pay attention. Now, my best recommendation is if you want to know what's in the coming future, I think we're going to have some severe weather. I think we're going to have asteroids. I'm expecting a Chelyabinsk any time now. These asteroids are really close and really big, and there's thousands of them, and they pass every day, and something's going to hit us soon. And it's usually a dead body that can actually hit and not electrically repel. Now, the object cluster group, the main lead object, is an electrical body in nature. I mean, this whole group it's charging. It's this and it's constantly discharging off all of the other planets. And that's what alerted us that there was something there, because when we first sighted it, it was so small. It was an anomaly. And we watched it for 2 or 3 years, and then it finally came in. And this anomaly was always in the same place until it got closer and closer. And then we realized, after many sightings, that it was a group of asteroids, and we've been watching it literally for about 5 years. And now we started calling it the Object Cluster Group, and for short, we call it the OCG, because that way we can talk amongst ourselves and not too much give away our hand. But this group of asteroids, and there's a lot of them, and from what I saw over top of California, wow, I would not be surprised if something drastic happens in the next few months. And maybe that's what all of this World War III crap is another distraction. It's like, you guys pay attention to this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Look at how many people are fearful and posting about, well, is Donnie going to drop the bomb? And it's crazy, and then it's just back and forth, and it's like, oh yeah, he said, she said, and I think this is another attention thing. And
Robert, could you address Robert's questions in the chat, please?
Yeah, hold on a minute. Okay. Yeah, photo would make. Okay, where's Robert? Robert in Waterford, Michigan.
Yeah.
He says, okay, to get a better pic photo, would it make a difference to use a cinema camera to capture these objects? Biggest key would be to manual focus.
The cell phones are doing phenomenal jobs. Just you put the sun on one side of the thing, roll it around for a few times so that you yourself identify the lens flares, if any, so that you understand what you're filming. Because every month I'll hang up a new drawing of where the planets are generally located. Now, it's different in everybody's area. It might be a little degree off here or there. Their angle of view may be different, but generally it's accurate, as in sunset or sunrise placement. It works either way. Because the planets are always between us and the sun. So wherever the sun is, that planet is on the left of it currently, and that other planet is over currently on the right. And so we know what's what and where's where. Check for lens flares. You can even put your thumb in front of the sun to see what's behind the flare of that, so your eyes can see it. Because a lot of people get better captures on their phone than they know, because then when they go back and watch it, they go, "Oh my God, look, I didn't even see that." And that's why they banned a whole bunch of cameras about 10 years ago, because they didn't want people to get everything. There's some limitations on this new stuff. I'm sure it's all licensing, of course, as usual. But look for the dark areas. Pan out wide enough. Don't focus on the sun, because there's a bunch of little stuff right now in front of the sun, and a lot of it. And those are asteroids crossing in front of the sun every day. And some of them illuminate. Now, there's also illumination of these planets in the evenings as the sun is setting. You'll see this. You'll look up in the sky in the north west in the evening, and it's really bright, and it's like late, and yet the sun should have set in the west, and you look to the northwest, and it's really intensely bright. That's because the sun is shining on the bottom of these planets post-horizontal sunset. You follow?
I was going to ask you about that, because there are sometimes when the sun is setting and I can't even look at it. It's so enormous.
Well, that's because it's a larger sun than you're used to. We have two suns. The standard red is behind our yellow dwarf, and it puts off so much light that it basically, I mean, remember when you were a kid and sunset and the sun was the size of a quarter?
Well, I remember going down to Key West, and everybody watches the sunset at night. That's a big event down there. Now, and I'm just wondering, can they do it now? Because I can't do it from up here.
For a period of time in about 2011, 12, or 13, somewhere there, because the second sun arrived from below our sun and from behind it in late 2011, right at 2012, which was the Bakhtums and all of that. And when they joined, there was backblow CMEs, and you can look that up. And they'd never seen the sight of this, and that's the two suns discharging off each other. Currently, our sun is the reason we're having a weird sun cycle that scientists can't explain is because the larger sun is behind it and drawing off most of that energy from the back that we don't even see. And right now, currently, I looked at the sun. I look at it daily. We have a patchy coronal hole pulling around, which means more increased earthquakes, larger, bigger, sixes, maybe sevens this time. There have been some fives and sixes in the last few days, and so we're going up the scale again because the planetary pull, and now there is effect of the solar system from the sun and the passing planets. So we get in the double whammy here. And then, you got the moon, and then you got the object cluster group, and that's causing havoc. And we may get basted. As a matter of fact, I kind of hope we do, because I want people to go, boom, oh shit, now we have to look at our survival skills and what's important around us in our community. It'll get people to wake up, and maybe they'll stop this angry, grumpy, I hate everybody outside my front door thing that we're all going through from our brain stuff.
And also, considering what you just said, the moon is probably going to, the moon has been hit with lots and lots of, asteroids, but now would be the time, I think, that it would be getting bombarded coming in the near future, I would say.
And there's direct illumination of the object cluster group at night, too. People have been capturing this tumbling multi-rainbow thing, and they didn't know what it was. And there's asteroids up there, and the reason it's refracting rainbows is because it's an asteroid and it's tumbling. It's showing you different refractive surfaces.
Right. No question about it.
There's stuff there, and what was the coolest thing, coolest beams I've seen in forever was how close and how huge Nepesity's illuminated rainbow ionized base core at night was. And I've got about 20 or 30 from around the world, and they all match, and it's always the same base, and it's always got that big open core hole in it. And Ceru has a huge open core, but it's got so much of the debris, and we didn't even know that debris was Nepesity and Saturn and that too. And it was when Ceru first came in 2012, 2013 behind Nibiru. We saw this big glowing ring when it first came in, 3 or 4 AUs away, and then 2, and then 1, and then it came into the like 87 LUs or whatever, and it had this glowing bottom and open core, and we got so many pictures of it, and it was rainbowing out because the sun angles were shining through the atmosphere. And light doesn't show up in space until it hits a gas, and then it breaks down in prism effect. Now, if you're seeing rainbows in the sky, big, massive, long, what looks to be a cloud that goes from one end of the sky to the other, that's the bottom of a planet. But if you're seeing a rainbow dot, that is the object cluster group, because it's electrical, and it has a debris field of micro debris that is also rainbow hueing out on the base of the ion bleed off of the planet it's nearby. That's why we've been led to believe that this object cluster group of asteroids was more than just asteroids. It's an electrical free radical electron. Some people would actually call it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's been a lot of photos lately of concave rainbows. Pictures that's on the internet.
Yeah, the upside down rainbow is you're looking at the sun through a base crescent illumination through the atmosphere of a dark planet. Because if they're between us and the sun, we're looking at the dark side of the planet. We're looking at the night sides of these planets when they're between us and the sun. And everybody says, well, shouldn't we be able to see them? And I'm going, no, it's not Hollywood. This isn't the movie theater where you see this. You have to look for the outside line of the planet and the bottom illumination of the angle of the sun prior to sunrise and at sunset, and you'll see these things, especially in the middle of the day. It works too. You can see the big, huge, round division of darkness and then light blue. It's like dark blue, light blue.
Right.
And then you start to look around, and you got this big circular, and we're talking sky filler. We're not talking little dots. When they onset over the top of us during the day, they fill the sky.
Let me ask you something. With all this taking place, my opinion, I think most of the coastlines will be inundated, will be uninhabitable. You expect mass migration to come inland, and you're up in Montana over there. I mean, your neck of the woods could see a whole heck of a lot of people, maybe from Washington, Oregon, even California.
And that is part of what the Pleiadians told me when I talked to them, is that people who listened to me and who believed in my opinion would flock up here to Montana, which is part of why I've stayed here rather than go south for the weather or financial change or anything. Because Montana is not an easy place to live in.
It's rough and rugged.
We got 40 below. We used to have 40 below come January, February, and that, of course, has not happened in a few years. We get it in December now, and we get a quick sub-zero freeze of about 20 below, and then all of a sudden our weather turns weird. 3 years ago, we didn't have winter from pretty much mid-February on. We had spring all the way through. And now this year, like I said earlier, we had 8.3 inches of snow in Great Falls. Now, that's on the other side of the Rockies for me. I'm in western Montana. I'm up in, I'm near Missoula. And this area is the Good Rock, and I'm living alongside of an old fissure volcano, which is literally like a boil-up scab on the earth. And our rock is stable and solid and fresh, and it ain't going nowhere. Where everybody else is old and worn and wicked and moving to, I study the Grand Craton. I study the Seven Sisters. I love geology. I'm a geology freak. Actually, I'm a science freak. I study everything. I'm even working on a little bit more Latin. Anyway, I truly believe the ocean, if we do roll after we're let go, electrical thread disattachment or something, because we know the pole value. The other day I got a report of an 11 degree off north. 11 degrees. That's
pretty big. That's
big. And so if they've got us tipped and they let us go, we could have a major pole. I'm not saying complete flip, but what about just a few 20 degrees, 10 degrees, 15 degrees? Our weather has changed. It's not going to be how it used to be. Our temperate zones are going to be different. We know about what they talk about global warming. Well, it's solar system warming. All the planets are heating up, and this has to do with that second sun being within proximity.
Well, I was going to say anything over 15 degrees might as well be microbial life left on the planet, because that's all there would be. Anything over that, there'd be nothing left.
Now, you got to also take into account that this is a planned scenario. This happens every 3,654 years, and the Earth's populace is culled down, and the minerals and everything are rebooted. The commodities that are picked up from our planet on a regular schedule from the larger half of our solar system, because there are people on those other planets. And they come by here every 3,654 years and pick up the stuff that we collect for them, which is why you got all the infighting and everybody vying behind the scenes for gold and oil and this and that and the other thing, because it's a big shipment going on as we speak. And I'll bring it up real briefly, but we've been citing the Texas Cube. And for those of you guys who don't know what that is, go to YouTube, look up Texas Cube. Look up Empire Orb or watch my videos. I occasionally discuss the Empire Orb. That's a sphere, and it's like a smaller Dyson sphere. You can look that up. That came in through the Norway Spiral in 2009. There was a meeting in Sweden or Germany at the time where the President, Obama, and all these other dignitaries basically watched the Empire Orb come through the Norway Spiral. We have numerous video footages of it, and you can see the Empire Orb come through it, and then following that for the next 3 or 4 years, it was hiding directly in the sun. And for those of you photography buffs, been wondering what that big black dot in the middle of your sun on maybe 75% of your pictures, and yet the other 25% doesn't have them, is because that's when the Empire Orb is parked in front of the sun and no one can see it. Because I've seen the Empire Orb by eye. I've watched it stop. I watched it change direction, drop altitude out of the clouds, come into clear, absolute visual orb, mechanical, just like the Death Star, and I'm not kidding you. And I watched its central ocular eye turn blue. Bing! I almost peed my pants. And that thing stopped and looked at me. And I don't know why, but it did. And after that, because I would have never believed it as long as I lived, except then I started researching, because I watched the Norway Spiral, and I understand what CERN's up to, and we won't even go into that, because I don't want anybody knocking at my door in a black suit, nor do you.
Yeah.
Well, because I know what their problem is every time they go ahead.
I've already had that happen twice.
Right. Well, I had my visits to the courthouse basement, federal courthouse basements, one too many often, But anyway.
Well, black suits don't knock on my door, but I've had them follow me around.
I'd rather not replace the hinges and the door and all of that stuff because I don't know how quick I'll be to answer. But anyway, I know why they have trouble every time they turn the CERN on, but we won't go into that either. I think we've had that discussion. But there's a faction, and I need to also say this. There's so many people giving credit to the government going, oh, the sun simulator or these lenses or Project Bluebeam. And that would be a great way to scare the living hell out of all the religious folks by shining Jesus on the clouds. And that was as far as Bluebeam hologram crap would go in my book. Or they're doing something to hide stuff. But we know that these planets are here. But and nobody takes into account that we're looking at the dark side, the back side of these planets. Well, shouldn't we see it? Well, it's right there. I see it. Why don't you? You know, and once you learn how, you can't miss them. And you sit there and you go, oh my God, because they're so big. It's which also proves that Einstein and gravity was wrong, because if it was that close, we'd be dead. I've heard that so many times in 8 years, I could scream.
Yeah, they always say the same thing. Oh, if these planets were coming through, you know, they'd be coming crashing into the planet. So no.
Well, I've gotten to the point where I said, well, are you dead? And they go, no. And I said, see? You know, I mean, there's no other way, because they're here, darn it. You know, they've been here since, I mean, Nibiru in 2011 was minutely visible north, but it got here before that because it came in below us, and we came into them. And then around 2000, late 2011, you could see it as a small, if you held a basketball in front of you at full arm's reach in the northern sky. And then as the months went by, it went from the northern sky to the northeast sky, and then it went to directly above the sun, and then it got huge, and then went over to the far right, and it's been over to the far right ever since, but because it drifted off, and then in came the sisters. And we've documented this one after another planet coming in, and we've gotten so many sightings over so many years that we know what we're doing.
Well, my telepathic communication has been telling me that sometime this summer, and I'm feeling like it's late summer, that there are going to be massive earthquakes where...
Yeah, well, it's due. The Grand Craton's been moving. The P-wave cycles, what's been going off the coast of Alaska and off the coast of Oregon, and what's been going on in the Baja, what's been going on in the Yucatan Peninsula, in Chile, Argentina, the whole, you know, the Ring of Fire is just, there's numerous volcanoes going off everywhere, it's spewing, and there's a new one every other week. So yes, we're, you know, our internal core is heating up. There's tectonic plate movement. With the heat up of our crustal plate, the tectonic plates are now floating, and that, I think, is the sounds that we're hearing, is the moving continents. There's reports that Africa has moved 77 kilometers south. There's all kinds of abject flooding everywhere.
The whole side of Africa's cracking off. They said
right,
it's going to be...
and that's the stuff. That's the area that's stuck to Madagascar. That's that place that. And it's sliding south while Madagascar is headed north, where like India did. India used to be part of Australia, and Australia used to be part of Madagascar, and they moved up all the way from the Antarctica. And now, if you've ever seen National Geographic maps and things like this of the ocean floor, they show these huge scraping patterns that all, you know, where you can see that the continents over time moved, right? And geologists and mapologists have said, oh, the continents move slowly over periods of time. No. The continents move fast, in possibly one day even in some cases. What happens if this close proximity of this larger magnetic body passes by and grabs hold of the iron in that?
There you go. Charles Hapgood, you know, Earth crust displacement, and
right.
Einstein endorsed it. I know that Einstein. And then you have
the displacement of the water on the other side of the ocean where it's being pushed into. You've got upwell on what comes on shore of that, plus the tidal wave on the other side of the planet after the slosh is done. So I foresee we're going to, you know, look at the U.S. Navy future maps. Look at Gordon Michael Scallion's map.
I was familiar with him back in 2000, 2003, 2002, 99, 98.
Oh,
I
I've
remember
been
all
listening
that.
to Art Bell since the mid '90s, and
Yeah.
I've even contacted Art Bell, but he of course never returned my information, and I tried to talk to him, but obviously if he's anything like me, I get so much mail I can't, and I do try to talk to everybody that I see a message, but there's days that I don't get messages, and they're 4 days late, and it's like, what? So I know
Right.
I'm being messed with,
Yeah.
and literally word for word, they're probably listening to this phone call, and I wouldn't doubt it.
Oh, they're listening to all the phone calls.
Well, I'm totally nonviolent, and I followed the rules. I did not tell anyone about anything until my non-disclosure was agreed over. And now that it is, I think as fair is fair. We have a responsibility to our fellow man, and that's been forgotten recently by most of everyone.
Yeah.
And I do this. I don't make any money doing this. I occasionally ask for a little help when I fry a computer, but I don't charge $39.99 a month for a subscription, and I've got no affiliated sponsors so that they can't correct what I say. And I did it for credibility. I'm not making money off this. In 1980, when they told me that I was right and that there were other creatures beings living on this planet, I sat there and went, oh my God, everyone has a right to know this, period. And if they'd have told people back then, we'd be the Jetsons by now, or we'd have gotten our poop in a group a little bit better. I mean, but then, we can't save everybody. So where do you move half the United States population in one period of time? And how do you tell what's going to hit when there's thousands of objects out there?
Well, and that's exactly right. But what I was going to say is that what you had brought up earlier, people need better learn to prep. It's something funny that a lot of people have just totally forgotten is that what do you think, the settlers that first came here did? They had no cars, they had no planes, they had no motorized boats, they had no motorcycles. What they had was horse and wagon, oxen,
right,
their own grit, the seed,
a 40-gallon barrel full of salt, a 40-gallon barrel full of flour.
Exactly. These people, they would plant in the planting season and stock up for the winters because they knew what it was like.
They
learn
how to make an ice house.
Yeah,
the old-fashioned ice house. Because you can't refrigerate. I mean, can you imagine if our population decided they all needed to hunt?
Right.
And how many animals are going to be around for how long?
Right.
And
exactly right.
And the government has formed a region known as the wildlife sanctuary, and it's literally from like Colorado going all the way up into Canada in my area. And I've got the elk near me here, and the horses and everything else, and the buffalo, and you name it. And I'll be around, and if what I was told comes to fruition, then I'm going to be quite busy dealing with the refugee populace, because hopefully people will actually listen to my message. I'm not trying to make any money off them. I'm not trying to scare them, but dang, this is the real Poughkeepsie going here, the real McCoy. This is not a joke. You can ask anyone about my track record. I have been very, very accurate. Like I said, I don't even know how I do this. It's just that I've been doing it for so long every day that I pattern watch. And
right.
I'm one of those idiots. I actually recorded on VHS the weather for years. On VHS.
Well, why would that make you an idiot? I'm sorry. I disagree.
Well, my friends used to laugh at me for that, but I saved, literally, I have the 80s and 90s on tape. And I've got this big, and probably half of them I'll stick in the machine.
Pattern watching, you can make comparisons all day long. You can go back because you have the material to do it.
And this is all in my head, and I remember this. I don't forget much. And the serious stuff. I forget where I put my coffee cup 10 minutes ago, but I don't forget this stuff. And I used to be a lot better, but then I had some series of car accidents when I asked the wrong question in a secured location to a federal employee, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
I've had some
black suits.
You should have died accidents that were out of the blue. And a couple of years ago, we had a bullet come through our car window. And I think it was just to let me know that I was misbehaving, and by talking, and my house was fried the first 2 months I started talking just after 2010, And I was told by the electrician and the Montana Power guy that what happened could not possibly have happened because no breakers were tripped in the process of half my house, and all of its electrical items, plugged in or not, were fried. I replaced water heaters, microwaves, dishwashers, TVs, stereos, water picks, hair dryers, vacuum cleaners, carpet cleaners, stereo equipment. The list goes on and on. And that
Sounds
did not
like you
work.
replaced the whole house.
Well, I think they drone EMP'd me or something. Now, and just saying that on the radio here, they're going to go, "Oh, that guy's nuts," or "He's a conspiracy theorist." But I'm telling you, 2 months after I started this, half my house got fried while I was away from the house for an hour.
Yeah,
we came back and half the house was fried, and the other half worked fine. Nothing was wrong over there.
That was no coincidence. That was a microwave weapon that they used.
And the computer I had no longer functioned. Period. You turned it on and nothing happened. Nothing. Black. Nothing.
They may have used a scalar weapon, microwave or scalar.
Whatever. But the point with it is I've had some occasions where I've had to take a step or two backwards and tone down what I've said publicly. And I want everybody to know that, I'm not doing this for hype or fame or anything. I'm doing this because I know. I've taken the time I'm coming this fall, it'll be 8 years. And every day. And I sometimes take Sundays off depending on the kids. And if there's, having a sleepy Sunday, then I'll come online when something's important or if I want to check the earthquake reports or whatever weather. But I have done this every day and we know what's going on. And people have to get on board with this and stop with the conjecture and hype and guessing and all this, because even old info is disinfo. And the more newbies that come up onto this subject, and if they start biting into the wrong information, like listening to WSO or Scott with the Nibiru channel, I'm naming these guys because they're completely lost and they're misleading people. And all they're interested in doing it, and Marshall Masters, is they're interested in the money. And then they're going to hype out and they're going to go, "Oh," and then there's these religious figures that says, "Are you serious?" But anyway, they know who they are and they're making money off this. And they're just promoting the hype and they're throwing up their conjecture, and then they drop in their religious dogma and all this stuff on top of it, and they're scaring the crap out of little old ladies and teenagers. And we really got to get on board with the truth. And people have got to accept that there's a scientific, proven, yes, this is what's happening. And I'm working my backside off trying to get these guys to stop talking about the sun simulator. They say, "Well, there's a patent for it." Well, that does not make it up there. And how the heck are you going to power something that's going to emulate the sun? How much power do you have to burn to make a light bright enough to cover? And they're saying, "Well, don't these planets cover the sun?" No, this thread attachment is stronger, so the eclipses are brief. And we're seeing the backsides of these planets. And I'm trying to calm down from this because I get fervent about this subject.
I got you. Absolutely.
If you stick and they're creating this, and they're talking about the chemtrails and geoengineering and all they're doing is looking at our atmosphere, and they stop looking beyond that. They're not looking at the shadows. They're not looking at the illuminated cores. They're not looking at the crescent flare illuminations when a planet is right next to the sun and there's this weird atmospheric backlighting on the other side of the planet, and they go, "Oh, that must be Nibiru." No, we know what's up there. We've watched it 8 years, or 7.5, almost 8 years now. Anyway, I'll let you.
Well, I was going to say, you know what? The whole community seems a little, broken in its thought process. That's all I was going to say about that, But the reality is to all this that it is happening. We can see it taking place on a daily basis now. But what I was going to say earlier, as you were speaking, to try and wake people up. The point is, I think all the people that have been woken up have been woken up. It'll end up being something like this, at least in my head, as the scenario plays out, that all these people who didn't pay attention, who didn't wake up, are all of a sudden going to find themselves in a dire situation. And they're the ones who are really, really going to need the most help. And that's where I think we come in, is helping our fellow human beings, whether they paid attention or not. they'll end up paying attention and finally, waking up from their sleep to the reality of what's taken place, and then we will be there to help them, because it's going to take many, many communities, Samuel, to get our civilization back on track, and it's going to take a very long time.
Robert, Five has a couple questions for you in the chat.
Go ahead. But I was going to say, an example is the mass migration out of Syria right now. What are we going to do with these thousands of refugees? It's a horrible situation, and we've already seen the beginning of the migration. And I said this before: if you want to see what's coming in the future, just look what happened in the last cycle, because we don't have any idea how long these planets are going to be here for. We don't know how many rotations are going to be here. They could be here for 10 years. They could be here for 100 years. This information has been wiped out by all the factions over the years that wish to control us and remain the holders of these large amounts of gold for the shipment, so they have a level of leverage with ET above us.
There's a question here, real quick. There's a question here from Guest 5, just to take just the hair off the subject. He's asking, saying, what about David Wilcox, Corey Good, and Danny Wilton? Are they disinfos? I sometimes think they are. Would you ask Sam about them? What do you say to that?
I've not looked into a lot of David Wilcox. I think some of what he talks about is accurate. I don't pay a lot of attention to the human information, because my information comes directly from off-world. And I try not to talk too much about that, but I've been given a great deal of information of the reality of what our universe is and who runs it. And there is a federation of planets. There are numerous beings in space, and they're close by, and we're never really quite alone. We are owned, and there isn't a necessary situation for an invasion, because they don't have to invade what they already control. And there's been an outpost watching us, and there's been visitation on a regular basis. And it's pretty much like Star Wars. There's even factions that are rogue that come down here, like we talked about. You get ready to laugh. We talked about last time we were on. Come down for a nice bowl of cow lip stew. Where they come down and they take something that they want, and then they split. People have to understand there are numerous races that are technologically so advanced compared to us that it's unbelievable. I mean, it would boggle your mind. I've walked on the deck of an alien lander ship, and I've seen the controls, and I couldn't tell you how they run, but they explained a lot of this stuff to me, and I've even seen the main engine and how it works, and I've got a base idea. But then they started talking about time travel, how the Pleiadians can slice a page, a chapter out of a book and go into it. And this is how they knew to tell me the information about who I was and will be and all of this other stuff, because they were quite curious, because they couldn't control me, because I woke up from their little magic spell that they can do to humans. And they were kind of shocked by that. So then they went and found out who I was and went through the history books. And frankly, I don't know if they even went and looked me up on Facebook or whatever, or YouTube. I don't know. I'm sure they have a copy of it in the future. Who knows? But I try to tell everybody to trust themselves. Don't listen to a bunch of people. And the best way to describe it is, if it fits, it's true. If it's complicated and hard to understand, it's a lie. And please do not give the credit to the government, because they haven't got this under control. They've, when we talk about HARP and stuff like that, the HARP was developed to push things away. Because they know these things are here. They know they're going to be damn close, and they don't want to bump in, because they want to keep their jobs as long as they can, so they can crawl into their little holes with all the shit they've already stashed away.
Yeah, well, and there's numerous underground bases. Might as well call them cities. I mean, Colorado.
I've been in a dumb before.
The airport in Colorado is basically an underground city. Why do the Chinese build a city that can hold millions and millions of people completely vacant, but maintained?
Right. Well, that's because we're going to get
perfectly.
That's because we're going to get visitors afterwards. This next cycle, I was informed this, and I'm going to let out a big secret here tonight on your show. We have to share this next cycle. And they're going to come down and visit when there's far less of us that are not the crazy wackos, like we talked about cousin Larry last time we were on the show, where good old drunk cousin Larry shows up and wants to celebrate at 11:30 at night when you're trying to put your kids to bed. They don't want those kind of people. They are going to deal with us when there's far less of us to deal, and then we get to share with some new friends. And you've heard about the China arc, where it's an oval. It's like a Stargate. The China Stargate, we'll call it. That's what it is.
I have not heard of that.
Oh, oh God! Go to YouTube and type in Chinese Stargate.
Okay, I will.
So basically, what you're saying, Samuel, is that they don't want anything to do with a bunch of ignorant people. They want to weed out the ignorant ones and communicate with the intelligent ones.
Well, humans put off an electromagnetic field. They read our thoughts. It's like having 5 people with Tourette's syndrome, and you're all trying to drink beer together, and the other guy's being sober. It's just not going to work, because we put off. We're short-lived versions of our parents, and we burn our energy up in this 60 to 80 years, which is normally meant to last 2,000. And we put off a vibe, and we're powerful in certain ways that the Pleiadians revere us, but our owners consider us animals until we're intellectually intelligent enough to say that we're a life form. Otherwise, see, they've got to have a distinction to control their animals. And if you like your animal too much, you're going to give him too much leeway, and then he's not going to do what you want him to do. And the overall thing is we have to collect the gold for them. They need it. They put it in their technology. They consume it in their lives to prolong their lives. Gold has a property to it that people are unfamiliar with, and I don't want to go too much detail with that. But
yeah, you're talking about monatomic gold,
right?
Well,
it will actually heal you. You can prolong your life with gold.
Yeah,
and that's why a lot of people wear it, and a lot of people consume it, and the rich and elite are starting to consume it now in their drinks. And that's because there's more to this. And I don't want to go too crazy and have people jump out of their windows or anything like this, but we are not what we were led to believe out of the Bible, period. And that was also informed to me from the Pleiadians. We are creations of a demigod, and we are owned, and we are controlled, and we replicate ourselves. And I've told 1,000, 10,000 people this, we're biotools. And when we get too many of us, and look what we've done to our planet, Mom and Dad are home, and they're pissed. And we're going to have to be a lot less of us, and it's a fact. And they want the planet to break up because that replaces the gold and the crystals and the oil and this and that and the other thing. And all of our nasty waste goes to the bottom and then gets buried over by time, and we start all over again. And you can see evidence of that going back 2 cycles in Chinese architecture and in areas in the Sudan and all of these areas that we're fighting for right now, which is the Middle East and all of those really old landing sites. And that's running the feed buzz, topic on the internet too, is that it's all about landing sites that the whole world's fighting over. But what they're doing is they're making all these artifacts disappear. And there's been stories about that for 5 years, but the military's going in there and taking all this secret equipment and stashing it. And that's also what's going on in the Antarctic. And stuff is melting out of the ice. You know that there was an announcement, and I don't think they really thought about it, but they were talking about growing vegetables in the Antarctic. And it was at one point in time, it was 63 degrees in one of the temperature readings in the Antarctic.
Well, Admiral Byrd talked about seeing vegetation and, lush green forest with blue lakes. So,
and Antarctica is the size of Asia or bigger. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It's enormous. It's probably one of the biggest continents on the planet.
Mm-hmm. And all that stuff has been buried under the ice for millennia.
Well, and you can see all the pyramids. You can see the tips of the pyramids.
Right, and so let's say, for instance, last cycle after the planets let us go, we tipped and rolled, and that whole entire region got buried underneath ice. And now all this stuff is melting out, and we're going, oh my God, look at this. And these stones that were laid in the Mayans, because we all know that the Mayans and the Aztecs and stuff had visitation from the gods. And we know they spoke with them because it's in their drawings and it's in their craft and Quetzalcoatl. And by the way, we need to mention wormwood again, and Quetzalcoatl or Apophis or the OCG or the asteroid plaque. I truly believe that the OCG is wormwood. the destroyer. And I think it's that electron cluster group, and we talked about the skull, because there's been a base sighted in that sucker so many times. I myself saw it when it rounded, and I started talking about it, but I skipped past it. I myself saw that base round the Attu's moon, and I just sat there, and it was one of the spookiest things I've ever seen in my entire life, and it was massive. And that jaw came around into the light, and the eyes and the skull, and I just sat there and went, oh my God. And I don't even know if I still believe it, but I saw it. So this is, I mean, if something comes down and smacks Earth and takes a few 100,000 lives, would there be a possibility that those life entities were collected up along with it?
Maybe.
We can go back to some of the early hurricanes in 2010, where out of the blue there was a hurricane and literally an entire town vanished and nobody ever found the bodies.
There was an entire town, entire village in China just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. It's gone.
It went up into the atmosphere of one of these passing planets, pulled up and taken away, and a passing wake eddy, vortexually sucked up, and then probably either dropped in space or taken all the way up into their atmosphere. We don't know. It depends on the discharge. Like we talked about, the light particles traveling northward faster, and protons, illuminated protons, going all the way up to the other planets because there's a pathway of that electrical. And then you could call it a breakdown of gravitation.
Well, I mean,
and I've seen footage where all of a sudden the car floats up. Did you see that, where this car floats up?
Yeah, I've seen those. I have definitely seen those.
And those could
still don't know what to make of them.
Electrical thread. If you have an electrical amount of power passing through your planet up to another planet, and it's connected electrically, wouldn't that eliminate gravitational and rotational if that thing was ionically fed from subatomic particles raising up to the other one? Traveling? Ion bleed?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's just the gravitational. It's basically a cancellation of gravitational properties between two bodies.
Right, and I saw footage recently where this car just up and floated up about 20, 30 yards up into the air and then dropped. And it was in China or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen
And I blew it up. I ran it backwards. I ran it forwards. I blew it up to 500 times, and I did not see any photoshopping. I was just like, wow.
That's what I tried to look for. I actually saw the shadows on the ground that was created by the car. So a lot. So I was shaking my head. I was shaking my head, going, "What the heck is going on?"
And we've in the Canadian spiral back in 2010. There's been really good footage where they captured a ship going to warp in through a gate, and then there was sightings in 2012, 2013, where the second orb came through a portal, and people caught that on video. And there's two orbs. There's an old one and a new one. The new one's the metal one. The other one's this planet with a hole in it, like a moon with a hole in it.
Let me throw this.
Texas cube.
Let me throw this in the mix and see get your thoughts. What about the breakaway civilization with the crafts that we captured in 47, back engineered, developed from there on, and created our own interstellar space fleet?
Well,
how does that fit into the picture?
It's possible that one of the sales points of us handing over a great deal of commodities is that we get a secret tech upgrade. And being that the status of our being is who we are and what we're made of and who owns us, it is highly likely that there is equal copies of you or myself, being that we've been abducted, using a collection of biomaterial to clone space pilots for the war that is currently going on in space between our republic, the one that owns us, and a nearby bug race. It's entirely possible that we've all been partially trained in a manner of way through Nintendo, notice that the same controllers are in jet pilots at Nintendo, et cetera, et cetera. So it's highly likely that there are direct clones of us fighting this space war, just like Star Wars has bred us to believe in the Clone Wars. See, all of this information, there's a good Hollywood and a bad Hollywood. The good Hollywood is preparing us for the coming events. It's raising our tech level so that it's not an extreme shock. So we were prepared in certain ways that we can take secondary automatic skills because we've already been trained.
I got you.
There is a good faction and a bad faction going on. The Pleiadians are like the ASPCA for humans, and they want to see us further because they believe we're beautiful, powerful, wonderful people. And they believe it's a pity that we're only allowed to live 80 years because we are supposed to be able to live for 2,000. But our 24th chromosome, which they're only teaching in schools now that there's 23, our 24th chromosome is clipped. And that clipped chromosome is the one that we regenerate our bodies and self-heal. It also keeps us from ascending to a different stage once we leave our bodies. And that keeps us here to, I don't know how all of that works, but that's what keeps us recycling through what we would refer to as karma or reincarnation. And it also keeps our spirit ownership of the numerous bodies on this planet down to a recommended minimum of what their bosses, people, the beings above the demigods, because there's multiple levels of races of beings, you know, the glowing ones and the spirit ones and the astral ones and all this other stuff. And the higher races tell the lower races how they can and cannot behave in certain manners. And that goes back to the story of Enki and Elil and how the Prime Creator told Enki and Elil that they had to allow man to ascend out. And that's that group that is, of course, being awakened now. And hopefully the people who are into metaphysical learning and psychic learning and all of this stuff, and that's why some of our psychic skills are getting better, is because we're being allowed to be upgraded. And ascension is not for everybody. It is earned. You have to earn it. You are not going to be invited for the car ride unless you're worth it. And
I agree with that.
And that's the trick. Everybody thinks, oh, you know, a savior is coming and he's going to save us. Well, not if you don't deserve it. If you're not kind to the people around you, and if you don't take the time to learn and wake up and be a better soul and less aggressive and finger pointing and angry and petty and all this other stuff, they don't want to be around that. And you don't deserve it.
I agree. You know what, you guys? We burned through another 2 hours here.
And like I said on our last show, I could talk for the next month.
Well, absolutely. You know, Samuel, I've been getting a lot of comments here in the chat about how they love listening to you, and they agree with everything you're saying. And
I would ask that everybody
that we would have you back. So
I would ask that everybody share my name. I want to throw this in real fast. Everybody should share my name. Go to YouTube, watch my stuff, and then just tell people, because I'm not making any money off the YouTube. But it's through another site out of London. That guy gets paid for it. And I'm not making any money, period, but I want you guys to get this information and spread it, because this is the only way we're going to go mainstream, because you know that Fox or somebody else is going to laugh at us. They're not going to dare cover it because their license might be revoked. Anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But again, you know, I think the ones who are awake, and that's it. You know, and like I said earlier, we're going to be helping a whole heck of a lot of people. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, my favorite song, Final Countdown.
Gosh. I love that song, by the way. Yeah, that was a good band.
And we've been watching these planets, and I've been sitting here in awe, because at 2013 I thought we were done, and because that was first pass, and now we're on our fourth or fifth close pass of the whole group, fourth, fifth cycle.
Well, this is what I want to do, Samuel. I'm booked up for a couple weeks here. I in about 3 weeks we'll have you back. But I want you have my phone number.
Right, and I'll keep everybody abreast of what's
news. If there is some kind of breaking news, you give me a call and we'll schedule an emergency show and have you on.
Well, hell, every other week we got an emergency breaking call. I mean, you should see these Texas Cube sightings. The Texas Cube has been so huge that everybody's wondering, what's that square set of clouds? It's a cube. It's a big, huge space station, hotel, God only knows what ship. But we watched that sucker come in, too. And it came in right over Texas, which is the other collider, which is the other thread link to a far-off galaxy.
We'll have to cover all that. When you come back, I want to cover a lot of that.
Yeah, I just hope everybody learns this stuff and knows that it's a bigger world out there than what we've got here. I mean, what they're telling you in mainstream, even the conspiracy theorists haven't even touched on the scope of this yet.
Yeah.
Stop paying attention to the negative. Don't hate your neighbor. Stop fighting each other and realize that, we need to start looking up instead of across the street.
Absolutely. Samuel, I want to thank you. Both of us, we want to thank you again.
Well, I want to thank you guys for listening.
I can't wait to have you back on. We'll further this conversation, my friend.
Awesome. You guys please take care and watch out for each other and watch out for the angry ones.
Absolutely. Same to you, Samuel. You have a great weekend, okay?
Montana. All right, you guys take care.
We'll be in touch.
All right, give me a copy as soon as you can. How soon will this be on so I can grab a copy of it?
I will post it up on your page tomorrow morning.
What I mean on your page, I can steal it off your page.
Yep.
How soon
I won't be able to post it until in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Samuel, and thank you.
All right, I'll
everybody.
hang up now. All right, you guys take care.
You too, Samuel.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Another great show.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Always enjoy talking to him. He's fascinating.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And we will have him back